Sorry if I mispronounced this. This mix was sent in by Neelis. Alright, so far in general, it just feels like you have way too much going on in the subs and not quite enough going on in the low mids. Like the top end sounds pretty good, but in general it feels a little empty and a little weird because it just feels like you have too much of the focus in the subs and not enough of the focus in the low mids. Now I know in this kind of a genre that's kind of typical. There's usually a lot of sub frequency information going on, but it still sounds a little bizarre, especially with the snare. There's something going on with the snare sound, and again, I think it's just too much low end and not enough of that low mid range. But the snare sound for sure sounds really weird. But overall, it just feels like it's a little too skewed to the sub frequencies. Yeah, man, you have a pretty big dip going on at like 300 to 400 hertz. Like, honestly, if you filled that back in, this would probably sound really good. That's my biggest problem. It's just, it feels weirdly empty and weirdly boomy because of that cut in the low mids. Other than that, like, it sounds pretty solid across the board. Just like fill that back in somehow. You could possibly just boost that on the mix bus, or you might need to go into individual instruments and like undo the cuts you did there. But that's really the main problem that I'm hearing. It's just that cut in that frequency range makes it feel a little weird. Sorry if I mispronounced this. This was sent in by Domikos. All right, man, you specifically asked about like the master more than anything and overcompression. You might have overcompressed a little bit, but that's not even close to the biggest problem here. The biggest problem here is you have a massive dip in the low mids and you have a lot of really boomy low end, especially from the kick drum. Like we're getting a lot of it there. We're also getting a little bit of like boomy low end from the bass, but not nearly as much as from the kick. But in general, like the low mids just feel empty. It feels like you might have not cut the guitars there. There's like a little bit of guitar information in the low mids, but you definitely scooped the crap out of it in the bass. And like, that's really what would mostly fill up that area is the bass. Like it sounds like you just took way too much mid-range out of the bass and everything sounds really empty as a result. And because of how much you boosted the low end, like it feels very skewed. Just like the last critique I did, that hole in the low mids combined with the overwhelming sub frequencies just makes it feel really weird.
Push the space between you and your broken self. All start again when the song starts. Space echoes, echoes, echoes. Should I make it back? Make it back. Think about you.
Yeah, man, so you have this little dip in the low mids here, and then you have this big wall of low end. Like, and then everything's kind of flat up to 5K, and then it rapidly drops off. So just like, The overall EQ curve of this whole mix is just like really skewed. I'm gonna mess with this for a minute and see what we can do here.
Space between you and your broken self. I'll start again when the sun sets. Space still echoes, echoes, echoes. Should I make it back? Make it right? I come back to satisfy every single time, every time. I come back to satisfy every single time, every time. Take back to satisfy every single time, every time.
Yeah, so I mean, it's not perfect, but it's definitely better than it was. But like that just tells me that you over EQ'd everything, man. Like if this helps a little bit but not enough, like it's clearly not just your mix bus processing. It's not what you did in the master. Like you over EQ'd every instrument, and it's just you've taken all the life out of everything, and now it just feels bland and sterile and empty, and like you're EQing too much. So many people are EQing too much. Like, guys, don't touch the EQs. Don't touch them for a while into your mix. Get a balance with the faders. Seriously. Like, I said this a million times, and apparently I'm going to say it a million more. If you get the fader balance right, like, assuming that everything was recorded pretty well and you have pretty good source tones, like, you shouldn't need that much EQ, to be perfectly honest. Like, most of the mix should be taken care of just by balancing the faders. Like, if you're having to EQ things that much, there's something wrong in the recording stage. Or if you're just EQing because you think you have to, or if you're EQing too early on, like if you start EQing things before you have all the faders up, before you have everything in the mix, that's where you're going wrong. Like, don't EQ things so much. The basic tones should be good enough that you should not need that much EQ. This mix was sent in by Joe. It's a little quiet. I'm going to turn it up a bit. All right, so far, biggest problem is the guitars and the bass are too quiet. I was going to say the drums are too loud, but then that synth came in, and the synth is at a pretty good level compared to the drums, so I think your guitar and your bass need to come up quite a bit. I mean, honestly, the tones don't sound that bad. Like, the drums sound pretty good. From what I can hear, the guitar and the bass, they sound pretty good. They're just, that's the main thing, is the guitar and the bass is just too quiet. You got to bring those up quite a bit. Other than that, it feels a little sterile, which leads me to believe you might have overcompressed the bass and the guitar. Like I said, the drums feel pretty good. Like, they sound good. They feel like they still have a little bit of movement. But the guitar and the bass kind of just feel like really stagnant, like no ebb and flow to them at all. Like, they're just a consistent block of energy. So either you've overcompressed them, or they just, like, they weren't played that well. It feels mechanical. It doesn't feel lively. It doesn't feel energetic. It doesn't feel enjoyable. Like, it sounds like people were put in a room and forced to play, not like they actually wanted to play. Now that last section felt a lot better. There was a lot more energy in it. There was a lot more movement. So it's like, it's not all bad here. Again, main thing, just turn the guitar and bass up. But there's definitely parts of this that could use a little more life than they currently have. It just, again, just parts of it feel kind of sterile. They feel kind of boring. Like, it doesn't feel like whoever was playing it was enjoying playing it at the time. Like, that's something that people don't realize enough about recording is like, the energy is the most important thing. Like, really, obviously, yeah, tones are important. You want to get good tones, but like, bad tones with a good energy is always going to beat good tones with no energy, you know? So like, spend a little more time focusing on the performance and getting the right things out of the musicians when you're recording. Like, make it feel like it has life. Make it feel energetic, like they're excited to be playing, not like they're being forced to play. This mix was sent in by Alan.
Left, right, center, crater. Left, right, center, crater. I heard the world was in his hands till I could taste it. No, by the way I like to take shit. I'm looking down. Our time is gone.
All right, man, overall, this feels pretty good so far, but like, a couple things I'm noticing. Vocals definitely need to come up a bit. The guitars are overshadowing the vocals a bit. The other thing, the drums are overcompressed. Like, they're clipped to shit. Like, it sounds like you threw a clipper on the individual drums and on the drum bus and on the master. Like, they're audibly clipped and like a soft clipper. It doesn't sound like it was an accident. So like, definitely take those off. Like, I don't know. Obviously, people mix differently and things change over time, but recently I've been like barely compressing my drums at all. Like, I compress them on the way in, but in the actual mix recently, I've been compressing like on the drum bus and on the overall mix bus, but I haven't really been compressing individual drums. I've been trying not to use a clipper at all. If I do, it's for like, it's just barely kissing the top of it, but like here, it sounds like you just really overdid it with the clipper.
The worship, confused by why we laugh so hard. I see the end. Left, right, center, crater. Left, right, center, crater.
All right, there was a space there that was like completely dead air. I would not leave that as completely dead air. Take out most of the instruments, sure, but like leave something like a reverb or a delay tail or something to fill out that space, because it like completely cutting out is weird. It feels like the song's over when obviously it's not. Like, there's still quite a few more minutes here, but like with that dead stop, it's really jarring. Just like something subtle in that space, so it's clear that the song is not completely over. I know you specifically asked about like automation and effects. Like, that's something that you could definitely use an effect for, is to just fill out that space. Other than that, like, I'm not feeling too much need for automation so far. Like, maybe just like accent a couple certain notes on like the guitar or the bass just to like add a little bit more movement. But in general, like, the energy of this feels pretty good. Really, just my biggest issue is just the drums are clipped too much and I can't hear the vocals very well. Like, it sounds like a punk recording, like, which is fine. Like, yeah, it's not pristine audio quality, but this genre, it doesn't have to be. Like, the overall energy of this song is great. Like, I'm enjoying the song itself. So, like, that's the most important thing. But yeah, the couple things that are really sticking out to me is just the vocals are a little buried and the drums are definitely clipped intentionally too much.